Well, welcome everyone. I'm very happy and proud to be with you here. Realizing Steve and I were chatting yesterday, it's been 9 years that we've brought you a similar webinar here in the July timeframe from, well, we were Help Systems when we started this. We're now Fortra. We had a name change ourselves about 2.5 years ago. But today's topic, IBM in 2025, AI, Power 11, 7.6, and of course the story of the AS400 roots and where we all came from. This is a webinar. We are recording it as usual. You can certainly play it back later on, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Why not educate them on what IBM Power is? Nothing wrong with that. And I guess, Steve, we can move on to the next slide. Myself, I'm Tom Huntington. I'm our EVP of Technical Solutions here at the Fortra Company. I spend my entire year talking to customers and partners like you. Love the platform, have been an IBM champion myself for about 10 years now. And this year, again, 2025, it is really an honor and a great program as it gets us into learning more about the early information and things like Power 11 and 7.6 that came this year. That's me. Look forward to hearing Steve's story. And Steve, who are you if people don't know who you are?
So I'm the CTO of the IBM business, the Chief Architect of the IBM platform. I hold the distinction of being a distinguished engineer at IBM. I've worked for IBM now for over 40 years. I joined IBM here in Rochester, Minnesota in January of 1985. So we're at 40 years and going on. And I talk about this platform all the time, but I'm also in the background making things happen, making decisions, working with the teams that are actually writing and testing the code. So that's my role, and I'm looking forward to this year's version of this presentation.
Yeah, great. You know, only 40 some years, right? Hey, that's crazy.
Only 40. Yep. Yeah. So let's see. Why don't I give you just sort of a preview of what the whole presentation is going to cover, and then we have a survey question that you're going to launch when I get to that slide, right, Tom?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So this is a really good point to check in with where have we been as a platform, where are we right now, and where are we going. With the announcement this year of 7.6, the announcement of Power 11, the fact that Power 11 is in Power VS from the very first day it was available, plus all of the stuff that we are doing to make cloud computing with IBM I as easy as possible. There's lots of news to talk about. And then if anybody's been following me for the past year and a half, I've been talking a lot about how AI is going to affect the IBM I world, in particular, the watsonx code assistant, the thing I call WCA for I. So we're going to talk about each of these things. And then I think it's really important that everybody ground themselves again every July in understanding IBM's commitment to the platform and the fact that the roadmaps that we have just continue on forever. We may not know today what we're going to do 10 years from now, but we know that we will be doing something. And the things that we're going to tell you about that we're working on now, we might not have known about 5 years ago. So things are moving fast. So that's what we're going to talk about, but go ahead and get that polling question going.
Very good, Steve. Well, how much experience do you have with IBM I? More than 30 years, 21 to 30 years, 11 to 20 years, 1 to 10 years, less than 1 year. Gosh, I think about my own career. I've actually now been with Fortra for over 37 years. I started the week after the AS400 was announced. So yes, it's the 37th anniversary of the AS400 platform, which was a good foundation to where we get started. But I actually started my career on a System 38 in 1984. Actually 36, 34, and 38. I ran a mixture of systems there for myself and learned a lot about systems operations, programming, and of course RPG2, and other things like SEU and all those things. Yet people are still using some of those things. They don't have to, as we'll talk a bit about that today. So, all right, looks like I've given you enough time and to be able to close the poll and take a look at our results here, share the results. So more than 30 years is almost 50% of you, 25%, 21 to 30, 11 to 20, 15%, 1 to 10, 8 years, or 8% rather, and less than 1, we have 5%. So welcome to the new people, and we're excited to be able to share the story with everyone and remind you where we came from and where we are today. So hardly a legacy platform with all the changes here. Again, 2025, I mean, hats off to IBM with 7.6 and Power 11 here in 2025. So Steve, over to you. I'm gonna shut my video off and let you take it away.
Okay. And hey, everybody, thank you so much for answering that question. I think we do it most years that we ask that question, and it's always good to see the spread, because I try to include some things here for people who don't have a lot of knowledge of where we came from and what makes IBMI different. And while I know there are a few of you who have been with the platform for a long time who express appreciation for hearing about it again, those folks who've been with the platform for 10 years or fewer, this might be the first time that they hear any of this. And IBMI is a different sort of thing. The architecture that we built over time came from this interesting background where in Rochester, Minnesota, back in 1980, the IBM Rochester team, and I wasn't here yet, right? But the IBM team in Rochester, Minnesota had convinced IBM that there was a brand new computer architecture that could be applied to business computing, and it would have at its core an architecture that was built to last for decades and decades without causing disruption for its client base. Now, at the same time, there was a competing group of people in Rochester, Minnesota, who were creating the System 36, and its idea was, we're going to make it as simple as possible for a business to run business type applications on a super reliable, easy to use machine, so they don't have to know about the architecture of what's going on under the covers. Now, both of these platforms were very successful in their spaces, but the powers that were in Rochester said, if we could combine these two, if we could take that architecture that's built to last for decades and decades, but make it as simple as possible for application vendors and application creators in customer shops to get that kind of simple, easy to use value, we would have something special. And that's what the AS400 was. And so even though throughout the years since 1988, there have been tremendous changes in the hardware, processors, I/O, storage, architectures, et cetera, used in the industry, we have actually been able to provide a level of stability and investment protection that carries on into today. So yes, we just did Power 11 in the just past couple of weeks, but there are programs that were written during the System 38 days and the AS400 days that are continuing to run. And when they get moved to Power 11, they will continue to run without ever having had to change at all. Now, I know most programs have been able to get updated and modernized and so on, but that sort of stability, that sort of investment protection is actually the basis for why this platform was created out of the merger of those two in the first place. We knew that every application out there in the world was going to have to depend on some sort of data. So the System 38 relational database that was built into the architecture was critical to the future of application management development on this platform. And the fact that there was this object-based security model that came from the System 38 was going to be able to protect that environment better than any previous or ensuing architecture that has come into the world. Okay, but the level of integration that provided an ease of use and an ease of management and the flexibility to be able to create an application once, and it didn't matter what size your system was, you didn't have to have different versions of that application. That was actually pretty revolutionary for the time, and we created an architecture around it. And as I mentioned, there's that investment protection that is the basis. The fact that when you compile a piece of code on this platform, you can carry that compiled code forward. And if you don't need to make a change, it will always continue to work, right? Those value propositions were supported by a set of architectural elements that still exist today. The fact that we have DB2 for I, the fully relational database that is integrated with our specialized single level store architecture, meant that people don't have to spend people resources doing the kind of database management and storage management that's so common on every other architecture. The fact that we have a whole bunch of security architecture elements, object-based security being one of them, protecting the platform, meant that people haven't had to worry about things like Trojan horses and viruses on this platform the way they have in other environments. And yet we were able to include open technology in our integrated technology set so that people could bring open technology in as it became available and applicable to their marketplace. And the virtualized work management that we had from the very beginning has allowed people to run multiple workloads on the same platform, so that even before there were virtual machines out there in the world, even before people conceived of the idea of containers on Linux, for example, we had the ability to run multiple workloads or the same workload multiple times without having those things interfere with one another, because we knew from the beginning customers aren't going to want to have a single workload on a single box. They're going to want to have one box that can contain everything. And again, that technology independent machine interface has carried us forward over time, so that even though we've had to change throughout the years to have new hardware architectures, new storage architectures underneath us, we've been largely able to protect the application and the users of the application from those changes. Of course, people who actually configure the systems, et cetera, they have to learn some things. We still try to make that as easy as possible. Now, again, for those of you who are relatively new to the platform, maybe this is the first time that you've heard me talk about this. For those of you who've been around longer, I think you've probably heard it. But when you tell the people who are not familiar with this architecture and what it brings, one of the first questions they'll have for you is, okay, it's a different architecture, I get it, but seriously, what does that get you? Well, one of the things that it always gets you is a lot fewer people are required to manage this platform. Now, this is a graph from an old analyst thing. I'm not putting numbers with this. I'm just showing you that in general, when you compare how many people it takes to do a full business support for IBM I with the same number of people or the same business running on a different architecture, you will find far fewer people. And I bet a lot of you who are out there recognize this. I bet that in your business, there are far fewer of you running the IBM I than there are running whatever workloads you've got running in some other platform. And when people try to replicate the full stack of IBM I in another environment, they always find that they need more people, partially because you need database administrators and storage administrators in ways that you don't even require in our architecture, partially because we build in the ease of use and the integration and you don't have to manage things separately. But in any case, this is a business value that many of our customers get, and some of them understand it and appreciate it. Some of them, particularly if they have new executives, need to be taught this, because when they think about doing some other platform instead, they need to realize the people costs that they are going to incur if they try to do the same kind of workload for their same customer base, but somewhere else. Now, part of what makes this architecture different, I've talked about in several ways so far, which is we created this architecture so that we could replace the lowest level of the operating system to adapt to the kinds of architectural changes that we knew were going to happen in the hardware world. So this is from the very first release of the OS 400, showing the fact that there was a machine instruction set, an MI instruction set with a whole bunch of operating system code below it, but that the operating system above it was the host for these compilers and applications that supported those compilers. So throughout the years, when we had to change, and our biggest change from a hardware architecture point of view was when we moved from the original 48-bit processors. You guys still might be thinking about 32-bit processors being, you know, what everybody has today. Way back then in 1988, the first CISC processors that we produced AS400 on were already bigger than that, 48-bit. And when we went to 64-bit processors and a RISC processor instead of a CISC processor, we had to replace the whole underlying set of operating system code. But while we did that, everything above it remained essentially the same. There was conversion that we had to do with those objects that had been compiled before to make them run on the new stuff, but you didn't have to make code changes by and large. And the architecture that we had for an object-based platform to make sure that if you're running a program, you can run the program, but you can't edit the program. That's not even a definable operation against a program object. Whereas for a file object, you couldn't try to execute that. So nobody could send you a file, claim it was a program, and have you execute it. It's impossible to do that. It's hard, it's impossible to do that with the architecture that we have. And so again, while we are a different sort of beast than other architectures, those specific architectural elements we have provide a level of value that is, if not impossible, close to impossible to get from some other architectures. And so those of you who are newer, or those of you who have been around for a while and have lost this bit of it, that architecture really does provide significant value to you. Now, one of the easiest ways to see how this architecture affects how people have to apply resources to a system is to realize that even way back in System 38, we were thinking about the fact that when you have a whole bunch of storage attached to a system, something is going to have to manage where your files, your database, your source files, whatever you want, where those files are sitting on disk. Why? Because the things that you use the most are going to perform best if they are on the fastest, closest storage that you have. And so from the very beginning, the System 38 said, tell you what, the system will manage that. You don't have to spend people resources figuring out where should your most used data be. We will figure that out ourselves. We will manage that storage for you. We will present to your applications as if we have one single storage, and we'll decide which stuff goes on disks and which disks those things should go on. And so as the System 38, again, I wasn't there then, but as the operating system deals with data, it's going to spread that data. Now, over time, we had to do things differently. For a long time, every piece of data that was spread across those storage units was actually put on disk, even if it was temporary. But over time, more and more applications required that there be huge sections of temporary storage that was never, ever going to get put on disk for permanent use. And so we had to create an adjunct to that single level store, which is called TerraSpace, so that we could properly deal with each piece of data you were using in your software. If it's something that was going to need to get put into the database, then it gets put in that single level store, and we'll talk about how we optimize for that. But if it was something that was never going to get put in storage, it was only stuff that was used by the application, well, then we have a space for that. And yes, that stuff might need to get paged out if there's not enough room in memory for it. It's not that it'll never show up on disk, it's just not necessary for it to show up on disk. And so we could treat it more efficiently. Again, none of this did you have to worry about. Yes, technically, in some languages, you can say, I'm going to define this stuff in TerraSpace. If you know for sure it's a temporary thing and that's what you want to do with it, that's fine. But in general, we take care of that in the operating system for you. Now, again, at the very, very beginning, we knew that clients were going to want to use their data in a relational way. And so we knew people were going to want to issue queries against their data. And so we had, from the beginning, a classic query engine that came from the System 38 and was enhanced over time during the early days of the AS400. But even then, even when it was created back in the System 38, it was clear that the SQL language could have an architecture behind it, an engine behind it that could learn from things. And so we wanted to advance beyond just being able to do simple queries. We wanted the database, which was already heavily involved with storing the data via storage management wherever on disk it was most useful and most highly performant. We wanted to have it take advantage of the fact that we knew these things were going to happen over and over and over again. So we started inventing this new query engine, the query engine that is used by almost everything that you have today, something that could learn from the past and get faster over time. This is also a value proposition that you have that you may not be aware of, and it's very, very difficult to replicate if you go to some other platform. Certainly other databases don't have this kind of capability because they aren't integrated with their storage. But what we can do in our SQL management inside DB2 together with our storage management is say, you keep doing in your application this relational thing over and over and over again. So we are going to replace, put in different spots, that data so that it gets faster and faster the more you do it. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that while people used to do like daily IPLs, it's a bad idea to do that because we build up knowledge in between IPLs of how you're using your data. And the more you use it, the faster and faster we can make things. And over the years, we pushed more and more of the queries that are done, the data usage that is done into that faster engine. We still have the slower engine because some things are still better done there. We don't throw stuff away just because it's old. If there are requests, there are queries that work better there, we can do that. But most of what we do is done in that new space. And so DB2 and our single level store management has been able to advance over time without your application needing to make changes and without you having to hire the kind of data management, storage management, and database administration that other platforms have. Yes, you still need SQL engineers, DB2 engineers, to design how you want your data to be represented, how you want to build indices and so on, but they don't have to deal with the details of where that stuff is going to go into storage. And so we have a database that not only is secure and scalable, but it's also autonomic. It has built-in analytics. It now has built-in AI. This is just one stream of the underlying architecture that has evolved over time. Now, when we did our 35th anniversary a couple of years ago, I built this chart. It'll be in the charts you can have. I'm not going to present this again. What I'm trying to do is to say when what I just took you through is sort of the top two layers of all of the advancements in architecture that we have had in our journey from System 38, System 36, combining to AS400 to what we are today, okay? A simpler way of viewing that, if you want to, again, educate people who are new to the platform, who need to understand why we are no longer an AS400, is maybe this way. From an application point of view or from a database point of view, the AS400 was a certain set of things, okay? Like back then, applications were primarily batch processing and primarily, well, entirely run through green screen. But today in IBM I, you can have cloud native applications, you can have AI-driven applications, you can have web applications, mobile applications. So what we were in the AS400 still exists. You can do those things, but we can do so much more. And the database has grown, and workload management has grown, and so on, right? At every layer of the operating system, while many of the core architectural elements are there, and we rarely make it so that you have to abandon an old approach, the newer, more business-worthy approaches are supported by IBM I today. And so we have these key business values that we continue to focus on: integration yielding savings, reliability, security and integrity, all these modern capabilities, and the ability to collaborate with our marketplace. Another way of sort of telling that story today is to say that, look, that data and that security that's architecturally part of this platform have been enhanced through the years so that they can be always available, so that they can run in a cloud environment or on-prem or in a hybrid environment. And every time we do new things, we are building on, without disruption, those core value propositions. So when we bring things into the marketplace like DB2 Mirror, for example, it takes advantage of the secure high-speed transactions that are architecturally part of the platform. And then you can use some of that technology to do things like the new MFA, the new migrate while active. Sorry, I have old terminology here. It was supposed to be IBM I migrate while active. I better change that before the next time I present this, okay? So we continue to do all of that stuff. And I'll talk briefly about a couple of these things before I'm done. But as I promised, we are also going to talk about the influence that AI is having on the whole marketplace, and in particular on IBM I. Now, our strategy, the strategy that I've laid out for how we make decisions about what we're going to include in the operating system and the related tool sets, it's based on these three things, right? You're using our platform because the solutions that run your business get a significant benefit from being on Power on IBM I. We give you choices when you want to move forward and adopt new technology on how you move there, but we will integrate all those new technologies. Now, the words that change underneath that and the people who create things, there's churn over time. So there are details about what it means to have choice. Today, one of the things it means to have choice is what languages do you want to work in? And you can continue to work in the languages that have been around since 1988, or you can work in languages that are more open, or both, and that's used a lot. You can buy your solution from one of our thousands of ISVs, or you can write your own applications, or you can do both. And whenever we do something, we're going to integrate that. All of that is a part of our strategy. But another part of our strategy is working with the community. And I hope if you've been involved in this platform for a long time, you have been part of that collaboration, either by joining us at one of our many user communities around the world, or maybe you've been to Rochester and had a briefing with us, or at least, please take the surveys such as the one that Forge is going to do again this year, so that you can have your opinions fed in as ideas to us, and use the ability that you have to submit requests for new enhancements through the IBM Ideas portal, because we base a lot of what we do on the knowledge that we get talking with clients about what it is that they are doing in their business. Okay. I can't even describe for you how many times when we're having meetings, we talk about an individual client or an advisory council that gave us a particular piece of feedback, and that centers our conversation. Every once in a while, you guys will ask for something, we have to say no, but most of the time, what you have behind the request is still an issue or a requirement or a pain point that we want to address somehow. Now, I mentioned early on that I want to make sure everybody understands that we have this never-ending roadmap. Hopefully, those of you who've been watching me since I became Chief Architect 18 years ago recognize that this is the way we've talked about this platform forever. We always have a central release, the most recent release, which is very, very new this year. Okay, and we always talk about the 2 releases prior to that because we know there are significant customer bases on each of those prior releases. But we also talk about the fact that right now, today, we are developing the next major release, and we know the kinds of things we're going to put in the next major release after that. There is no end to this roadmap. Every 3 years, we do a new major release. While it's technically possible, we might have 4 years in between a major release at some point. I always see the need for major releases because things like the integrated multi-factor authentication require the whole operating system to change to provide that new capability. And so we need a major release to be able to accomplish that. Nevertheless, most of the function that we give you throughout the year is actually done in between those major releases anymore with the technology refreshes that support new hardware, new IO, new virtualization, with the new capabilities that our database team puts out with their database group PTFs, or the security team may put out with security PTFs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that is a never-ending thing. We've got IBM's full commitment behind that, and that part of that shows up in this version of the roadmap, which shows those same releases plus a couple that are even older, to try and show people that when you get on a release, you're going to have a good 7 to 10 years that you could live on that release. And if you project that out with a new release every 3 years or so, you can be confident that IBM is thinking about and investing towards a platform that will be healthy and delivering you new function well out into the late 2030s and beyond into the 2040s. Doesn't matter that I won't be here anymore by the time we get to 2040. The roadmap is in place, and your businesses will be able to count on it. All right, so with all that, I ought to touch base on at least a couple of the new things that have come up recently. Power11, announced just a couple of weeks ago, has 4 key themes: the zero planned downtime for systems maintenance that most clients are going to be able to get. And I want to point out for you that migrate while active is a big part of that story. I guess it says story. I don't know that. Anyway, big part of that story. There's a cool new capability when you use IBM Power Cyber Vault to be able to detect threats from ransomware in less than a minute and be able to back up from that. And while Cyber Vault is not an IBM I thing specifically, it represents, Cyber Vault represents a whole set of security features that are in Power11 and the associated operating system architectures. So MFA is a part of that full security story. AI integration is not just about AI workloads, it's also about applying AI to doing code development, and we'll talk about that. And of course, we always compare really, really well from a performance, throughput, and full workload capability on a platform to our x86 competition. Now, one of the things I wanted to emphasize is that this watsonx code assistant for I, that I'll talk about later in the presentation, is getting special attention in the Power11 announcements as a way to show the commitment of IBM and Power to AI being a business-focused technology in our space. And it's great because while you do not need Power11 to take advantage of this, it is nice to be on a wave where we can clearly show to the marketplace, when you use AI and Power, you are going to get significant value. So this particular story from M.R. Williams talks about how Jasmine was able to accomplish something 18 times faster because she used the code assistant, and this was an early alpha version of the code assistant. Then she would have been able to do it, or one of her people was able to do it without it. That kind of business value is what we're trying to help you all realize as we do our AI investments. Now, 7.6 is another thing that came out this year. Significant new capabilities in security, in database. Systems administration and application development, almost everything that we put out in systems administration and application development at 7.6 is also applicable to 7.5. Most of those things for app dev and systems administration don't require a specific release. We announced them at the same time, but several of the things that we did for security and database do in fact require 7.6, and so you need to pay attention to that. We are very, very pleased that if you want to take advantage of any of those 7.6 features, a whole bunch of volunteers got together and created the 7.6 features and functions red book. It's the first time since 7.1 that we've had a major release have a red book. So thanks to all of those folks who got together and did it, because if you want to see examples of how this stuff is done, that is in this red book. The manuals that are available online will give you the details about every particular option, but these show you the how you can do it. Now, one of the biggest features in 7.6, the driving architectural change, was around integrated multi-factor authentication. We know that most of the application vendors out there in the world have their own multi-factor authentication for their application users, and that's going to continue. There's no problem there. What our clients continue to press upon us is what we need is, especially for those users on our platforms that have significant authority to things, so security officers and programmers who have the ability to change what's in production and so on. We need to make sure that those high powered people are who they say they are. And so we need a way to do multi-factor authentication on them for sure. And then some clients want every user to be able to be multi-factor authenticated. And so we had to change the architecture of authentication throughout the operating system so that we could provide that level. Now, you do not have to, when you go to 7.6, you do not have to enable multi-factor authentication. But if you do, you do not have to do it for everybody. You can choose who gets multi-factor authentication required on their particular profile. And so it's very important that you all recognize this is a capability, not a mandate, right? And we tried to work with our vendors to make sure that those who were already doing their own MFA solutions, or security vendors who had their MFA solutions, that they could work with us on doing that. So if you then move to 7.6 and somebody decides that they're even going to have one person require multi-factor authentication, now there will be this, I don't know if you can see this exactly on the bottom right of your screen, there will be this capability to add an additional factor, which will only be required to be filled in for users that have multi-factor authentication required, but everybody will see that. All right, so that's just briefly some of the things that are in 7.6. There's more cool stuff than that. One of the really great things about how we work with our clients ahead of a release is that we have a bunch of folks who are willing to work with us with a beta version. And this time, when we ask those customers, hey, when this becomes available, how quickly are you going to adopt it? That's on the left-hand side. Half of them said in the next 1 to 3 months. Almost another 25% of them said, hey, I'm going to move within the next 4 to 6 months. That means that about 70% of those users were going to jump on 7.6 right away. That is unusual, because even for our beta people, it usually takes a lot longer for planning, but they appreciated the stability of 7.6 and the capability of 7.6, particularly MFA and the encryption of sysbase, to be able to provide immediate value to their businesses. So they wanted to move that, and every single one of them was willing to recommend it to a colleague, so that even the people who are tough to please were happy to recommend it. All right, well, I think we've reached kind of a point where I can take a couple of seconds and drink something. Tom, I think I'll give you the mic for a minute.
All right, Steve. Well, fantastic job so far, taking us through all the new technology and changes with IBM. I mean, just think about new operating system, new hardware, and of course, even new TRs for some of the older operating system levels. So one of the things coming up this fall from Fortra is our annual IBMI Marketplace Survey. This is year 13. I'm okay with 13. We didn't skip it. And that's because I even got married on the 13th, and that's lasted for a few years now. Uh, exactly almost 39. But anyways, so who uses this survey? As you heard from Steve, IBM uses it, Fortra uses it, all of our partners use it. I encourage customers to use it when you have discussion with your executive leadership, whether it's IT or financial or whatever, explaining why IBMI, who's on IBMI, and of course, even analysts like Gartner, Forrester look at the Fortra survey. So you often say IBM doesn't do enough marketing and around the platform. That whole world has changed, right? But what you can do is contribute to the ecosystem by filling out the survey. I know it takes a little time. There's 32, 33 questions. We've added a new one for this next year coming up in September, but take the survey. It's used by everybody. We can see our top concerns out there for IT environments, cybersecurity, IBMI skills. We're going to break down the skills a little further. I had a lot of questions about that this year and so forth. So thank you for allowing me to talk on that slide, Steve. Let's move ahead to the next. And of course, 7.6 at Fortra, very important. We did participate in the early ship program. We were ready with over 120 plus products for IBMI as of April 18th when it was available. We do have a blog out there. I will say if you use Go Anywhere, the levels of Java did change. That's the one product that we're not quite ready with for 7.6. And it's because of the Java changes and stuff. So hang in there. We'll have that available later this year. And amazing how fast time goes. So hang in there and we'll get that going. Let's go off to the next slide. You know, Power 11 came out here, announced anyways, earlier this month, shipping here shortly, I think on the 25th of July, if I remember right. Again, we are working with IBM to get all the performance statistics, the CPW, the RPerf, all the numbers that are used by us to run IBMI collection data, and of course the NMON data for AIX, BIOS, and Linux. We bring that all in. We work with the partner community, but we also work with many customers directly and making sure that when you do upgrade, you're getting the right system, or when you're moving to the cloud, you're getting the right system. We continue to do that as a service, and we look forward to hearing from you and helping you out in that space. And we can move on to the next slide. And then, of course, the state of the IBMI security study. This is direct result of us doing our free security scan. So free plus security scan equals knowledge to you, knowledge to your team about how your cybersecurity is configured on IBMI. It's a great starting place. It doesn't cost you anything. We'll coach you through one partition, allow you to run it on all your partitions if you want. But you know, we're very much so tied into cybersecurity. Steve talked about the new MFA technology. We were part of the testing of that. There's definitely a great benefit for that for the IBMI community, but also Fortra has an MFA solution. We're able to augment and provide additional support around the MFA technology when you do get to 7.6. All right, off to the next slide. And I just want to remind you about all the faces at Fortra. And really, Steve talked about IBM's commitment for IBM Power, IBMI. Fortra is too. And this team here of experts, I work with each and every one of these almost on a daily basis. Many of them are IBM champions for their activity around the globe and what they do for the IBM community. And I'd love to talk about each and every one of them, but I'll leave somebody out. And this is just part of our team. This is not just our only team members, but again, our commitment to the IBM Power family of products, both IBMI and of course AIX and Linux. Let's not forget about them. They are very important to this IBMI ecosystem as things have been combined. And I think that's the last of my slides for right now, Steve.
Yep,
All
I
right.
think so, Tom. So now it's time to get into, what's next for IBMI. And this gives me an opportunity to slow down a little bit and tell you about what we're going to do next, but it's always an evolution of where we've been. And we're going to start with that top IT concerns chart that Tom showed, and just explain to you how we use this and why it's important as we move forward. Now, every year the Fortress survey has this list of things that clients get to, and people in the ecosystem get to say, okay, if I look at this whole list, what are my top 5 of these? Well, if we drill in on the top 4 of them, what we've seen over the years is that security is always number 1, but you drill a little deeper into that, and it's not because people are concerned about IBM security, but because security is the biggest thing to be concerned about. Very few people are going to leave that off their top 5 concerns because they know they need to be concerned about it. And that's why it's important that we enhance our security capabilities. That's why it's important to have security vendors who provide tools, etc. Okay, so that's critical, and we invest based on that fact. That's certainly the case. But then if you look at the next things, IBM skills and modernizing applications, those have actually moved up in importance over the course of these many years that we've been doing this. In part because it's clearer than ever that people want to take their applications and modernize them, and they want people who can do that modernization, whether it's in operations or particularly in applications. And so they want to make sure that they can apply the skills that they can get to doing that. That's certainly true. Okay, it isn't that high availability necessarily became any less important. It's just, I think that when people are looking at what problems do I have to solve pretty quickly here, those IBM skills and modernizing applications has moved forward. And for as long as I've been in this role, and even before, this platform has been looking at how can we help people do those things, address their skills needs and modernize their applications. And let's be clear, we've got a lot of clients who are doing modernization. If you are one of them and you have told your story on our Client Stories webpage, that's wonderful. If you are one of them who has done modernization and you haven't, please contact us because we'd love to tell your story. But whether you have older code that you need to modernize to more modern languages, whether you need to add an availability or develop your code differently than you did in the 90s and use Git and CI/CD capabilities, whether you want to use sensors to do IoT geolocation, there are clients out there and partners who help those clients who've used our integrated technology to do those very things. Again, if you're one of the people on this chart, great, thank you very much. If you're one of the people who has a story like that, please contact us. We'd love to tell your story, because people on my team and I meet dozens and dozens of times a year with clients who say, hey, I want to do this in my business. Can you do that on IBM? And the answer is always, of course you can. And the more customer stories we have, the easier it is for us to say, look, this is how Alpine Bank did it. Look, this is how Orange did it. You can find in our list of, I think it's over 130 customer stories now, you can find a customer who's done most any kind of innovation that you want, and we'd love to have even more. So modernization has been happening, but as the modernization has been happening, other customers want to modernize, and people still want to know that they're going to be able to apply the skills they'll get tomorrow when they hire someone to those things. In each of these cases, there were new technologies brought to bear that didn't exist in back in the AS400 days. And if a client thinks that all you can do is green screen RPG and COBOL, they wouldn't realize that they could do things like integrating the positioning of a satellite detected location into their delivery system. But of course you could do that on IBM today. They just need to be shown that it's possible. So there is a lot of modernization going on with the tools that we have been producing over the course of the past 20 years and more. What's different about how we're going to be helping clients do that in the future? Well, if you look at all of those things that customers listed as part of their top 5 concerns, even last fall when this survey was taken, 30% of our IBM client base said AI is one of those top 5 things. Okay, AI wasn't even on the chart like 4 years ago, and now it's up to 30%. And I bet it's going to be even higher this year because AI can be used in so many different ways. And people who run companies know there's value there. They don't exactly know sometimes how they're going to get that value, but they know that they need to be looking at that. And so one of the reasons that the numbers of the top 4 things might be lower than they were before is because AI is stealing some of those, right? Stealing is the wrong word, but you get it, right? If you have to pick 5 things and AI is one of them, but you didn't have AI on your radar 2 years ago, 3 years ago, then that's going to have thrown something else off your top 5 list. Well, again, modernization has been happening, but so has AI in the world, right? In the world of IBM, we have automated manufacturers who are using AI to plan and drive their automated manufacturing environments. We have clients who are using AI to process natural language requests. So in this particular case, Italian requests coming into Alexa and translating them into queries into our database, into calls, into programs that are on the back end. So there are AI usages already going into the world. There are web services that allow people who deliver things through Amazon to gain knowledge about their customer base based on the AI that is available to them through AWS and then incorporated into their workload that is going on and stored in DB2. There are lots of clients out there in the world who took advantage of our geospatial analytics that we put into DB2 about 4 years ago now, and they are using that to do cool things like tracking locations of potential customers or tracking cows through the marketplace, or where can I go to put my advertising where I'm going to make sure that the people who look for high-end furniture see my product. All of those things are being done today with AI. So AI is not something you have to wait to adopt. And while I'm going to show you in just a second a chart about how AI is going to be factored into the strategy of IBM, you don't have to wait for that stuff to happen. Okay, you can look at these and other client examples. You can go, oh my goodness, if you go to any of the user community events that we've had recently, whether it's Ocean or the Common in Europe or Common Power Up, there have been lots of clients and technologists saying, I've done this with AI and IBM, whether it's running large language models on IBM or incorporating into our application a call out to something that's in the cloud somewhere, whether it's IBM's cloud and watsonx or whether it's AWS or something like that, because there is no reason you cannot do that, right? All of this AI stuff, particularly cloud-based AI stuff, is available via the kinds of web services that you can call from within an application, or you can call directly in the environment if you know how to do that stuff. Okay, so don't think that you have to wait. What you're going to want is to look for use cases that are similar to yours and then find out which technologies were used from IBM and from somewhere else to make that all happen. All right, now as I mentioned, we're going to get to how AI is going to fit into the strategy of IBM. Our core values are still the same, okay? All of what I said before about IBM's strategy is still the same. Now, let's figure out when AI enters the market, when we try to apply AI as a technology in those value propositions, in those decision points on what we're going to do, well, what do we mean? What can AI do that can help in each of those environments? And the first one, and I hope all of you expected me to talk about this, the first one is, well, if you're going to develop the solutions for IBM I into the future, you're going to probably want to take advantage of a generative AI assistant that can help you do application development modernization. Now, I have seen already, while I was on my little drink break, I went and looked at a couple of questions that are out there in the Q&A. I want to remind you that if we can possibly leave time, I'm going to try and go back to that before we're done and answer some of those questions. But because a couple of you have asked questions about the code assistant that I'm going to talk about, I'll try to answer the questions that I saw while I'm presenting, and then we'll come back to other questions as we go along. All right, so let's get into this assistant that you all expect me to talk about, and I'm very, very happy to do that. Okay, so one of the other question spaces in the Fortress survey every year is about development on this platform. And so here are the answers to two questions which together helped us to decide what's our first focus going to be for a code assistant for IBM I. Number one is, when you all in this community do new development on IBM I, what programming languages are you using? And 91% of you said, I'm using RPG. Now, you aren't only using RPG, most of you. You are also using some of the other languages, certainly SQL. Many of you use CL programming. So you're allowed to select more than one, because we know people are doing programming, new development on this platform in more than one thing, okay? So Java maybe, Python maybe, Node maybe, and of course there's COBOL. Now, I personally think COBOL is underrepresented in this survey. In my view, we've got about 20 to 25% of our active client base who are running COBOL, but maybe those folks are not answering the survey. Maybe they're not thinking that they're doing active development. But in any case, we know COBOL is out there and it needs attention. But first, we're going to focus on RPG. And when we focus on RPG, what RPG should we focus on? Well, when we ask clients, when you're doing RPG, what version of RPG are you doing new development in it? And fortunately, right, we've developed the free format ILE RPG. Now it's been around for 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is. It's a long time, but we've been telling people, if you want to get new programmers who's never seen RPG before, to pick up RPG, you should be developing in free format, because if you do, RPG looks very much like any other procedural language that they will have learned wherever they were before, whether it was school or another job, okay? And obviously, the vast majority of you, when you're doing RPG development, are doing that. And so we're going to have the code assistant help you develop that ILE free format RPG. Now, some of you are still using fixed format. I'm going to tell you again, if you want to get new people involved, you're far better going to the free format stuff, but at least it's ILE. It's late AS400, early I-series versions of RPG. That's good. I'm glad you're at least there. Some of you are still doing new development in prior RPG versions. And we know a lot of you, this question is not asked in the survey, but we know a lot of you, even if you're not doing new development in those older RPG versions, you have a lot of code that's in those older RPG versions. And so if you're going to bring a new developer on, even if you're going to give them a brand new tool set and tell them they can code in ILE RPG, we know that those new developers are going to need help with the old RPG, because you're going to ask them to go in and update that code. You're going to ask them to make changes to that. And probably when they do that, you're going to want them to translate the older versions of RPG into the newer versions of RPG. And so we should create an assistant that's going to help you do all of those things. Create the most modern version of RPG you can, and deal with the fact that a lot of the existing code that you have is in prior versions, and you're going to want to do some level of conversion of that stuff. Okay, so that's our primary early focus, is helping developers who are going to have to produce ILE free format RPG, but help them understand stuff that may be in an older version of the language. Now, we're going to have to do that assuming some level of integrated development environment, the environment that your programmers are going to use. And I hope this isn't news to anybody, but the tool set that we've picked to do that is the VS Code-based IDE. For a few years now in the open source world, there's been the Code for IBM I open source product, which is a VS Code IDE. And we, IBM, are invested in putting into the open community as much support for that as we possibly can. While we do have a great many of our clients using RDI, it is based on the Eclipse technology, which is far harder to enhance over time. And so having to choose one, we chose the one that we can make the most progress in the quickest. We're never going to apply this code assistant tool set to the older application development. I understand some of you have to go in and make single line changes and you use SEU and PDM for that. I can tell you it's still faster to do that with VS Code and RDI, but you'll never believe me. But please don't use SEU and PDM to do massive at scale application development. And we aren't going to be investing in making sure that that old tool set can integrate with our assistants. It's just, there's too much architectural change that would be required to make that happen. So we are building our watsonx Code Assistant on top of that IDE, the VS Code IDE, and it's going very, very well. Now, as of last May, early May, IBM started talking officially about this code assistant that is going to be for IBM I. I know when I first started talking about it a year and 4 months ago, I started talking about it as an RPG code assistant because we knew we were going to do an RPG code assistant. But once we got the full backing of IBM to create a real product around it, we said it's not only going to be for RPG. It's going to start with RPG, but it is going to be for more than that. And so when we named the product, we said watsonx Code Assistant for I, because we want this AI technology to be used for development and for modernization for all our clients, okay? And we want to be able to take advantage of a lot of the investment that's gone into the other watsonx Code Assistant products. I'll talk briefly about both of those topics, but let me just show you kind of how Watson Code Assist talks about its vision for every language that it supports. And this is the RPG version of it, but realize that I based this chart on one that was created for Java for Z and for Ansible for Z and for COBOL for Z, okay? We know that when an RPG developer gets put on a product to do some new thing, there's often modernization involved, but there is certainly a learning process that has to go on. And as we apply our AI technology through our assistant, we want to help them with every phase of what they're going to do, okay? Now, we know from talking to our clients that the very first thing that those developers have to do is to have knowledge, detailed knowledge of the code they're being asked to enhance or to own if, for example, what they're supposed to do is do problem determination on that piece of code. And so the first thing that our AI assistant is going to do is to be able to take a piece of RPG code and explain it in several ways so that that developer has the knowledge of what's going on in that program that they can reliably say, okay, I can see where I'm going to need to make this change. We now need to call this new routine, or we need to use this database in a different way. And I can see where in the logic flow that's got to happen. So the very first thing that we're going to do is be able to explain RPG code, okay? But we also know in the open world, in that VS Code environment, we have just produced a unit test stub builder that's part of that VS Code extension library. And so we're not just saying that you only can do explain and you can only use WCA for I. You also can use tools that we have put out there to help you make progress around this circle. Over time, that unit test thing that's available out there in the world today will get enhanced to use the knowledge that's been built into our large language models so we can do an even better job of creating automated test cases. But there is already something. And so when we talk about WCA for I, we're not just going to talk about WCA for I. We're going to talk about that and related tools that are out there to be able to do that stuff. Now, we've also heard from a lot of people that in addition to that, we, the customer, need a way to help our developer, and particularly our designers, the designers who are going to give the jobs to the developers on changing things. We need help so that they can understand how all the various pieces of this application fit together. In most of our customers' environments, the people who originally developed this application are no longer part of the company. So we need to be able to look at the application landscape and say, these programs are connected in this way. This program calls this for a particular function, but that same program is called from somewhere else. And so we need to understand that relationship. And all of those programs use this data definition model. And so if a change happens, you need to know that that's all going to affect those various pieces. Now, there are tools out there in the marketplace that do that, and they're many of them are very good tools. I'm not saying that you should stop using them, but we believe we're going to be able to apply AI to help create a description of how these pieces are using with more detail than we've been able to do before. And so while there is in the open world today a tool set that provides the basis of that understand, we're going to do even more of that in our code assistant. And then, of course, you can see around the circle, we're going to get to the point where we can help you generate RPG. That won't happen right away. The full understand thing that I talked about won't happen right away. This is a roadmap. This is the beginning of a set of tools that are based on us being able to train a large language model with detailed knowledge that we have of how coding is done on IBM I, how all these pieces are put together, et cetera. And eventually we'll get to the point where we can refactor or transform from older RPG to newer RPG, maybe from RPG to other languages if it makes sense. Like maybe you want to transform your green screen UI into something else. Again, there are tools out there that can do that, but there may be ways that we can apply AI to make that transformation better, faster, more reliable. Who knows? So we're gonna look at what's out there that we can apply AI knowledge to. Now, somebody specifically asked about, okay, that's RPG, but what about COBOL? Well, I can tell you that it takes a long time and a lot of training material to do a new language. And so we had to focus on RPG this year. But this fall, I'm going to be one of the people on the team asking for people who want to help us figure out, what do you want us to do with COBOL? And then we will work on that next year. We know that in the Z world, the first thing they brought out into the world with Watson Code Assist for Z was a transformation of COBOL, Z-based COBOL to Z-based Java. And that gets a lot of our clients thinking that's what we should do too. Maybe that is what we should do. I can tell you though that when I talked to several of my large COBOL users, they said that's not actually what we're interested in. And so we're going to be gathering up a bunch of COBOL users to give us feedback on what do you want to do? What do you want us to help you do with COBOL? The base problem is still the same as it is with RPG. I want to be able to hire a new developer, have a code assistant that helps them do the job they need to do, okay? Whatever that job is. Now, for some companies, that has meant I want to hire a programmer who knows Java, and I want a tool that helps convert COBOL to Java. I get that, but while you're doing that, and that can take a long time to do that across a lot of code, don't you also need to allow them to develop stuff in the existing COBOL code to add new function? Then we'll have those conversations. But we will be working on that problem in 2026. And so somebody asked, when are we going to apply this kind of assistant to COBOL? It will be next year that we'll be working on that. Now, we are gaining a great deal from being part of this WCA family, and WCA is gaining a lot from having IBM I in it. When we are compared to other code assistants in the marketplace, IBM's Watson Code Assist brand in general is seen as being a leader, and we do gain some benefit from that as well. I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But as I mentioned, we are based, our IDE integration is based on this Code for IBM I VS Code-based stuff, because there is so much we've already put out into the world that does some of this base stuff. For every language that you can develop on IBM I today, we have support in the VS Code environment to be able to do, color-coded highlighting and so on. For unit test, you can now generate unit test stubs, you could do code coverage stubs. So we know that that's a basis upon which we can build. We are also building on top of the fact that we have Watson Code Assist in the picture. So when you are a developer and you have your VS Code environment, we know as a basis you have Code for IBM I. We continue to work with the community to enhance that with new capabilities. And then we, as part of the product that you will consume, you will purchase and consume, we will have an extension that fits in with that. Now, what are you going to do with that? You're going to have it initially, for example, explain a piece of code to you. How do you get that explanation? We have trained a Granite large language model to know RPG really, really well. We have had now more than 10 million lines of code contributed to us from the community. Thank you so very much. It was only 5 million when I went to PowerUp. We've had a lot more contributed to us. Okay, and so that model is going to be sent a request. Here's the code snippet that the user wants explained. And we will gather along with that code snippet a whole bunch of other contextual information. Here are the data structures that this program has access to. Here are the other APIs that it has access to. So we'll gather up a whole bunch of context and send it along with the prompt, the request, to that large language model, which then takes all of that and sends the response back. But how does it get there? Well, that thing is in a cloud. That large language model is hosted in an IBM cloud somewhere. And so from your VS Code environment, it actually runs through some base WCA, Watson Code Assist technology, which recognizes that, oh, this is an RPG request. I'm going to send it to the Granite model that does RPG. This is important because the WCA core stuff also can funnel requests to things like Java, if you've got WCA for Java installed, or if you've got WCA core involved and it's doing something like one of the other languages, C or Node or whatever, it can send that to the right large language model. It's just if you're working with a piece of RPG code, it's going to go through and it's going to send it to the Granite model. And when that model, whatever model is answering the question, gets its work done, it's going to send it back to a chat window that again shows up in that VS Code environment. In this flow, it's all about RPG, but you could be coding other languages as well. I'm only talking about RPG because that's the new thing, that's the thing that we're helping develop. But I just want you to be aware, we're gaining value from the fact that this code assistant core technology allows us to integrate with a bunch of other language support, and it can do all of the necessary validation. Now, what are you going to see when you're doing WCA? I've done videos at events. We don't have time for it today, but this explanation that we have has at least 3, probably 4 different kinds of explanation it can do. The top one, explain, is a detailed explanation. So we ask the LLM to act as if it is a very experienced RPG programmer and explain in detail to another RPG programmer what is going on in this code. But you can also ask, please, large language model, just give us a business level couple sentence summary of what this code does. Because a lot of times designers, they just need to know, okay, where is the code that does this particular insurance flow? Where is the one that does this particular prescription flow? Okay, so they just need a simple summary of where a particular function happens in their full suite of things. And then there's another kind of explanation that we found out as we were doing our early testing with our early users that programmers wanted, which is, I have to use this code. I've been told that I have to use this code. I don't need to make changes, but I do need to know, okay, what do I have to send in as inputs and outputs, and what effects are going to happen in the data around it, et cetera, so that I know how to use this. And again, when we build the prompts for this stuff, we have done a whole lot of prompt engineering to ask the LLM questions in ways that will get you useful, reliable information that comes back from that. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. And we are now in public preview on this. The very first users for our public preview have gotten their emails sent to them saying, here's how you get started. Throughout the rest of this summer, more and more people who were on our wait list are going to get access to the public preview, where they're getting to talk to our current large language model that's out there in IBM's cloud. We will also be refreshing that model over time because we continue to train it better and better, and there will be new features added. So by the time we get to the big announcement, which will probably happen in the first week or so of October, lots and lots of people have had a chance to give us feedback. This is not to be used to do a bunch of work. I mean, I know people are going to use it to do some work just to see what it looks like, but what we're really looking for is for people to say, yep, this works, or, oh, I found a problem, and here's what the problem is. All right, I am now done talking about the assistant. I want to cover a couple of other things that are part of the AI strategy for IBM I, because AI is not just about assistants. It's also about how we can use DB2 data in AI workflows. We want to make it easier for those transactions that are happening in DB2 to be looked at by AI analytics, to be affected by advice that's given by AI workloads. So that is part of what we're doing. Plus, of course, we'll do more things like the geospatial analytics, where DB2 just has AI built into it. We know there are solution providers and tool providers building their own AI features. Hooray! This whole marketplace is so innovative. What we want to do is to make sure that if there are Power and IBM I things that we can do so that everybody who creates solutions has value from us, we want to do that. We're not trying to force those vendors to use our stuff. It's just if we can create some things that every vendor can take advantage of, it's sort of like creating an application server that everybody can depend upon, right? I'll talk about that in a couple of charts. We want to make, we want to make it as simple as possible to deploy AI workloads that connect back to IBM I, and that's actually something that Power is working on significantly. You will begin to hear more about that in the next 6 to 12 months because the whole Power infrastructure team is using IBM I users as their template. If we can make it simple for an IBM I customer who's purely focused on their business transactions to roll out an AI workload and connect it to those transactions and provide value, if we can do that, that will be a big win. And so we are working on how to do that. That is a key thing to work on. We also want to make sure that we internally can start taking advantage of AI to help you manage, anticipate issues, and so on with IBM I environments, and to create connection points so that people who produce tools that do that will have access to what they need. And that kind of leads into my last discussion point, which is integrating the power of agentic AI into development. Agentic is a word that people have been hearing a lot lately, and I had to learn a lot. So I wanted to take you through my learning process. I had been studying LLMs for a couple of years to get prepared for the code assistant stuff. And then all of a sudden people started talking about agentic AI and this protocol called MCP that's connected to it. And it's like, man, there's something I need to learn. So what did I do? I did what a lot of us technologists do these days. I go and I ask an AI, hey, explain to me agentic AI and MCP. And so guess what? It gave me a bunch of words. Now that I know what agentic AI is and what MCP is, I go back and I read these words and I say, yep, that's what it is. But I got to tell you, when I first asked the AI the question and I got all these words, it did not make sense to me. There was sort of too much knowledge that it assumed you already had. So instead, I went to Jesse Gorzinski and I said, Jesse, when you've been talking about agentic AI, what have you been saying? And so he gave me this nice chart. I really appreciate it. An AI agent is an application. Oh, okay, I get that. It can act autonomously. All right, it can act on its own. What can it do? It can understand, it can plan, it can execute specific things. So you create an agent to do specific things that it can usually do on its own. And they use large language models. So it's not in replacement of a large language model, but it's connected to large language models so that you can interface with these things called tools and other models to fulfill user goals. Okay, all right. I have a better idea. Now let's bring that home to how IBM I might want to provide value in this agentic environment. I said, what's the thing we know? We know that we have users, and those users have systems. And those users want information about systems, and they want to do things with those systems. And how do they do that today? They use Navigator or they use ACS to get information or to perform actions on that system. That will continue to be the case. But in this agentic world, when somebody wants a piece of information, even if it's a piece of information that's very specific to them, how do they go about trying to acquire that information? Well, most of us have some sort of AI assistant out there in the world that has a chat interface. Maybe we have multiples. We can do it on Google, we can do it on Amazon, we can do it on our Microsoft, we can do it a lot of different ways. We can talk to our phones, we can talk to our attached speakers. So I believe that clients are going to want to be able to get information from and do operations on their systems using that chat interface. Well, if they're going to want to do things like what's going on in my system, now that's too broad a question. The question is probably going to be something more like, what job is currently using the most cycles on my IBM I platform, and here's its name. Okay, that's the kind of thing. But just for the sake of this discussion, any specific kind of thing that's going on in my system, what are you going to have around your system? You're going to have a bunch of ways to get specific information or do specific things. And fortunately, for more than a decade now, Scott Forstey and his team have been creating services, things that we used to call SQL services, but now they're IBM I services implemented via SQL. So there are a lot of services and there are a lot of commands on IBM I that can give you the kind of information that you might want to then get in a chat. You're not connected via Navigator, you're not connected via ACS. What you have is a chat. And look, there's stuff over there. Now let's just find a way to tie what's going on in that chat to what's going on, what's available to you to find out on that system. Well, how do you do that? Well, in the world of agentic AI, those chat interfaces have a protocol that allows them to be a client of servers that can get them information. The MCP client has to talk to a large language model so that when you ask it a question like, on my IBM I system, what's going on, it can figure out, oh, what should I be looking for in a set of tools? And then on IBM I, we have to be able to be a server that says, I have a bunch of tools that can answer questions about IBM I and jobs and performance. So then the MCP client can choose, I see a tool that a server, an MCP server has that looks like it can answer that question. And so it will send the request to the server will make whatever call it needs to, whether it's to a command or to an SQL service or whatever, and we'll give that information back and the answer will show up in whatever chat interface is going on, okay? The future of IBM I actually already exists in some cases for people already. We have already seen ISVs creating this flow within their own componentry, and that's great, that's wonderful. But I think IBM I needs to create a sort of canonical way to come into IBM I and have it be an MCP server so that everybody knows here's how you can get access to the stuff that the system provides. And then vendors can also put their services and tools on IBM I as they have done with other applications forever and ever. And maybe they'll use the same interfaces, maybe they'll use different ones. That's not important. I just think the future of IBM I is going to be affected by this, because if we want to continue to be an integrated, easy to use platform, we want to be able to get managed, expose ourselves and the information that we have in a secure way, in the way that clients are going to want to interact with us. All of this is future, but what isn't future? Well, it's still future. We want this platform to continue to have the best return on investment of any platform that you use. What we continue to look at is how can we invest in this platform to do even better, whether the new technology is large language models, agentic, or whatever might come next. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to turn this back over to Tom. I think he has another question or two to ask. Then we'll see if we have time for even one or two questions. Let me see if I can go look at
Yeah,
those.
we have some great questions out there, Steve. Take a look at that. Hey, just to remind everybody, at Fortra, we're committed to the IBM I platform. We help you out in backup and recovery, HA, document management, cybersecurity, monitoring the system, business intelligence, capacity planning, and automation. These things do tie into the topic of AI and other items that Steve has talked about today. Again, we're ready for 7.6. Before you leave, I just want to launch one more polling question and throw it out there. How can Fortra help you? And if you are interested in anything, we do provide a lot of what we call technology updates, where we talk with customers one-on-one. We help people with BI data access into IBM I, make it easier for your end users to access data directly from IBM I. Why put it somewhere else? I mean, my gosh, IBM I is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with great high availability and scalability and reliability. Put your data and leave it on IBM I and access it there. HADR we can help you out with, certainly document management, and then that free cybersecurity scan is also available. So Steve, I'll leave that open for a bit. One of the questions we had out there, yep, go ahead. If you want to just go ahead and answer.
There are a couple that I want to make sure that I answer, because I was intending to answer. The number one, somebody asked what power processor families will 7.6 require. You have to be on Power 10 or later with 7.6. It was a weird schedule thing this year that we actually came out with a major release before the next Power family came out. We always try to have our major releases run on the two most recent Power families, but as it happens this year, because Power 11 was a little later than 7.6, Power 10 and Power 11 are the base homes for 7.6. So if you're still on Power 9, but you want to take advantage of multi-factor authentication, you need to start planning to move up to Power 10 or Power 11. So I wanted to make sure that I got that question answered. Was there another one you wanted me?
Well, hey, I wanted to say, woohoo, unit tests for the win from Mario. So that was a good, not a question,
Yeah,
but a comment. I loved it.
yeah,
And then there was also the person that was conversing with us about the COBOL
yeah.
AI need. I think they're talking about a new feature already. I don't think you've necessarily said that. You said you want to start a committee and talk to people around
Yeah,
this need,
yeah.
right?
And so Ronaldo and anybody else who's out there is in the same position. Hopefully you're following me on social media, not because I'm egotistical, but because that's where I put out these requests. In particular, I do it via articles, blog posts, and LinkedIn. When we start soliciting for people who want to do advising us on COBOL, I will put it out there. But if you want to get ahead of it, there is an email address that we set up called AI for IBMI. That's all letters, AIFOR IBMI at IBM.com. Now,
And
most
Steve,
of
I
the
think you can use,
correspondence,
I think you can
sure.
use the chat. So maybe drop that in the chat, right?
Okay, can I
Oh,
chat?
say that again. I'll
I,
do it.
okay, please, AIFOR IBMI at IBM.com.
Okay, got it.
If you have code to submit to us for training, that's what it's been used for. But you can also send us an email that says, I want to participate as an advisor, a sponsor user, when you get to COBOL. You can certainly do that. We're going to start building that list. Again, I wasn't planning on starting to collect that stuff until the fall after we had done our major announcement. But if you get in early, you'll just get in early.
Um, Another question out here, I think you'll be able to address appropriately, would be regarding older tool sets. There's been some talk about SDA going away. Is this true? What will be the replacement for changing your DDS
Okay, so yes, SDA is no longer part of the 7.6 release. You can continue to use SDA as long as
up
you want to,
until
but
then?
it's not supported anymore. But one of the features that has been added by the open community to the VS Code for IBMI space is a screen design aid. I mean, we need people to move to these more recent things. I can't go into all the details about why SDA had to stop being shipped, but it was
Yeah,
a technology we could not carry forward. So, yep.
but you can modify all your older SDA in the newer tool sets, right?
Oh, absolutely. The DDS there. Yep, 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 yep. It's not,
So
it's
I
about the tool itself, right? The tool itself doesn't,
is being
is
deprecated,
not,
I guess is the
is
right
being,
word, right?
yep, it's being deprecated.
Or
But that
has been
doesn't mean that
actually, right?
that doesn't mean you can't continue to use the stuff that it produced. Of course you
Right.
can. You can do it in the new tool set. All right, well, we have run past our time, Tom.
Okay, very good.
Hopefully
We
you
had a
can give
couple
me the
more
rest of these
questions come
questions.
in. I will
Yeah.
provide those over to you afterwards. As always, Steve, a wealth of knowledge and enthusiasm about IBMI and the Power Platform. So great working with you again. And let's cheers to next year, I guess, right?
All
So,
right, sounds
all
good.
right.
I'll see you around.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.